23rd, 2015. Madam Clerk, have we met all the noticing requirements for this meeting?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. And please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Here.
Ms. Crum-Miller?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Here. Mr. Liverman?
Here.
Ms. Butler? Yes. Mr. Simon is here, and Mayor Lempert.
Here. And now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to start our meeting off tonight with several proclamations. We're lucky to live in a town like Princeton where we have many things to celebrate. So I'm actually going to go down there, and I welcome anybody from council who wants to join me to congratulate many of the people we're honoring tonight.
All right.
Okay, I'd like to start with the proclamation honoring the Pee Wee A hockey team of Princeton. So why don't you guys all come on up? And the Princeton Tigers Youth Hockey Pee Wee A Division team recently won the New Jersey Youth Hockey League Championship. And they completed their season 21-02, which is excellent. And they have an overall record of 49 wins, 9 losses, and 3 ties. And you guys are doing a lot to uphold the Princeton name. We're very proud of you. And I, Liz Lempert, Mayor of Princeton, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey, do hereby extend my personal best wishes and those of the Princeton Council and wish you continued success in all of your future athletic and academic achievements.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and we have proclamations for each of you from the New Jersey Legislature. So the first is for Drew McConaughey. Kyle Fisher. Congratulations. How do you pronounce the last name?
Kosis.
William Kosis? Oh, that's you. Congratulations. Jack Kosoff? Oh, he's here. Congratulations. Gibson Lenahan? All right. Congratulations. Benjamin Reichbart? Not here. Okay. Carson Skoye? Sko? All right. Congratulations. Trent Demers? Congratulations. Cooper Sugan? Congratulations. Jack Borak? Congratulations. Rohit? And then tell me your assignment. Samaluru. Congratulations. Christopher Brake? Not here. Mateo Constantine? Congratulations. Christopher Crodasco? Not here. Thank you. And Patrick McDonald. Congratulations. All right, and one last round of applause for this great team. And also a special thank you to your parents. Can you give this to your mom?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. And then we have two of our very own from the Recreation Department to honor tonight. The first is Vicki Keynes. Come on up, Vicki. Sure. Vicki has a really good visual eye, so she's redirecting for the cameras. All right. Whereas Vicki Keynes was recently honored as New Jersey Recreation and Parks Association State Employee of the Year. Whereas Vicki is a 16-year employee of the Princeton Recreation Department and has become a jack of all trades with a varied set of responsibilities, including resident gardener, customer service supervisor at Community Park Pool, supervisor of women's platform tennis, oversight of community garden plots, family golf outing, kids aquathon, and more. And whereas Vicki's enthusiasm and winning smile is contagious and has made it hard for people to say no when they are working with her. Whereas now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor of Princeton, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey, on behalf of the Council and residents of Princeton, do hereby congratulate Vicki Keynes for the recognition that she so richly deserves and commend her for the manner in which she continues to carry out her duties and responsibilities to the Princeton Recreation Department.
Just a few words of thanks. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark, Trishka, Nick, Bob Kaiser. There are three wonderful women that I would also like to thank who recommended me for this position 18 years ago, this month. Linda Mizell, she's our former Corner House director. Marge Smith, she's a community leader. And Phyllis Marchand, right over there. I want to also thank my parents for giving me the strong work ethic that I now pass on to my children. And most of all, I want to thank my amazing co-workers who, without them, I couldn't do this or have this, with our director, Ben Stentz. Anthony, stand up because you weren't there when I got this award in Atlantic City. So thank you for coming, and thank you again, everybody.
And now I'd like to welcome up Jack Roberts. Jack is a familiar face as our former recreation director. And Jack was recently honored with the Frederick C. Sutra Award for Lifetime Service to the New Jersey Recreation and Parks Association. Whereas Jack was a 41-year employee of the Princeton Recreation Department and starting as a program staffer in 1970, quickly rose through the ranks. Throughout those years, Jack never lost sight of what community recreation is supposed to be, insisting that programs and events remain fun, inclusive, affordable, and accessible to all. And whereas Jack's enthusiasm in the performance of his duties and responsibilities as a member of the Recreation Department were characterized by his passion and dedication to the community. And whereas Jack was a tireless advocate for community recreation around the region, statewide and nationally, and upon his retirement in 2010, Jack continued to give his time to a number of valuable parks and recreation outlets, including the NJRPA Public Policy Committee, Montgomery Friends of Open Space, Mercer County Wildlife Center, and the Princeton Parks and Recreation Fund. Now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor of Princeton, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey, on behalf of the council and residents of Princeton, do hereby congratulate Jack Roberts for the recognition that he so richly deserves and extend to him our best wishes for continued success in all his future endeavors. Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't need this.
You're welcome. And is there anybody here from the autism program? Okay. We're going to save this for them, and we'll do it later. Thank you. Congratulations, everybody. Oh, yeah, thanks. Okay, the Pee Wee champs are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you can also, I'm giving you permission to go if you want to go. But Jack Roberts, you need to come back and sit. Just kidding. Yeah. Okay. We do have a fairly tight, full agenda tonight, so we're going to try to keep the meeting moving, and we're going to move on to public comment. And we had a sign-up sheet, so we're going to start with the folks who had signed up ahead of time and then open it up to everybody else. And this is for items that are not already on the agenda. So first to sign up is Martha McKinnon. And if you could please limit your remarks to 3 minutes, just because we do have a full agenda tonight. Thank you.
I live at 91 Edgerstone. Now this is fine. I just was trying to put a crick in it. I don't know. We'll try. I live at 91 Edgerstone Road, and I'm here tonight for a dark side of Princeton. I enjoyed the wonderful award ceremonies and everything, but I want to protest the appalling treatment of our very competent and a professional animal control officer, Mark Johnson, who was recently summarily dismissed by the powers that be in this town. I have lived in Princeton since 1958 and have been acquainted with many past animal control officers, all good men. But I can unequivocally state that Mark Johnson has been the most competent and knowledgeable of the lot. Mark has helped me on many past occasions to deal with many animal issues, and he has done so in a friendly and businesslike manner. And needless to say, he never had to issue me any warnings or give me any summonses. So I obey the law as far as animal issues are concerned. He is also a very compassionate individual, and Mark and I have shared many laughs about animal dynamics, and they can be pretty funny. Our community has been fortunate to have him serve us, and may I say, enforcing the ordinance of the town government vis-a-vis animal control. I was appalled and dismayed to learn about the disgraceful behavior of certain individuals in the town government in respect to the shaming of Mark Johnson, and feel compelled to act on Mark's behalf. After reading Dawn Day and Lindy Areff's excellent letters in this past week's Town Topics, March 18th issue, I reached out to these ladies and got their take on what had ensued and had turned out to be a disgraceful affair. After some sleuthing around and with help from good people in the community, I was able to find Mark's phone number at his home. As he now has legal representation, he was unable to tell me much, but I learned that he is 43 years old, and the chances of finding similar employment in another community are slim and none. And this is a man with a family to support. I'll be blunt. There is an overriding issue here that smacks of petty corruption. In piecing things together, it seems that the Linkeys, who were clearly ignoring the deer ordinance law, in attracting deer onto their property with the intention of feeding birds, and I'll give them the benefit of being ignorant. But Mark did issue them a warning first, before having to issue 2 summonses. And then they chose to appeal to friends or a friend in high places who serve on this very council, willing to let them off the hook and letting the blame fall on an employee only trying to do his job. And thus finding another excuse to force his resignation, something about rabies vaccine, or lack of thereof. A trumped-up feeble excuse, but much overused by government bureaucrats. Indeed, this is a very familiar behavior among those in Trenton and Washington, D.C. Too bad this town can't be above these kind of tactics. Now, I have a couple of questions for Ms. Butler. Are you a personal friend of the Linkeys?
Okay, we can't do this. And
Well, I'm told you're a personal friend of the Linkeys, and you have a lot to do with the Linkeys getting off the hook.
I'm going to actually turn this over to our administrator for a second
Thank
because
you.
it is a personnel issue.
First thing I'd like to say is, one, it's a very sensitive issue, and we want to be very careful. Mark has worked there for a long time, so in what we say, because it's a personal matter, we can say a lot, but what I can tell you is this. The incident that you're talking about that referred to the summonses for the deer he was not separated for that reason at all. That he was not, that's what he was not separated for that.
That's what you say.
In addition, actually, our elected officials it's not unusual for an elected official to be contacted, or it's very okay for an elected official to then contact a department head to then have that issue resolved. That's what Mrs. Butler did, Mrs. Butler did, and that was perfectly fine. But that was not the reason for the separation of Mark Johnson.
Well, these are only some of the questions you'll have to answer under oath if this goes to court. And I have the sense that Mark Johnson's attorney is quite willing to play hardball with this town. Yes. If this gets out, Princeton is going to have a very large black eye. So I'll be blunt. It would truly behoove this government to eat a little humble pie, quit being vindictive, apologize to Mr. Johnson, and offer to reinstate him to his former position. Princeton, sadly, is not a city on a hill, as defined by John Winthrop, governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It's become a very vindictive political entity, rewarding its pals with favors and punishing its non-supporters. In conversing with residents around town concerning Mark Johnson's plight, many revealed to me that they were very, very dissatisfied with our new First Consolidation government. And they were not predominantly Republicans. I'm almost through. I suggest that you can rise above this. By the way, if you haven't already realized this, being without the services of an animal control officer is an inconvenience at best for the community. We had a good professional one in Mark Johnson, who is now sitting at home wondering what he's going to do with his life and how he and his family are going to live. Let's see some common decency practiced here. And by the way, I have deer on my property that come through my destroyed fence from the Russell estate, and my dogs have gotten after them a few times. I would have needed Mark if something bad had happened. Fortunately, the deer got away. So I hope you'll reconsider what you've already done. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person to sign the list is Catherine Arif.
Good evening, Council. I'm Catherine Ira, commonly known as Lindy. And my question to you tonight is, I gather that Montgomery Council passed a recommendation to have the animal control officer be hired for 6 months by Princeton. And I'm wondering how much Princeton are going to pay Montgomery for his or her services.
1,500? It's one of the resolutions on our agenda tonight, and it's 15.
I believe last night they agreed to a sum of money. I wonder what that agreement was.
$15,000 through June 30th of 2015.
Right. Well, I have a concern about using Montgomery animal control officers because do they have more than one officer? Because they cover Montgomery, Rocky Hill, Skillman, and I believe Kingston. How on earth can they cover the whole of the area of Princeton? We have a huge amount of kill in this area on the roads. We have raccoons that are rabid. We have all sorts of things going on all the time. And I can't see how that can be a satisfactory arrangement. And a probing question, I do hope you're not doing this to save money. I know that we're short of money, but Mark Johnson was given a pittance, in my view, for doing a really good job. How many people want to pick up roadkill and deal with all the problems that we have every day? I think you'll find it difficult to find somebody of his caliber to replace him. I don't think he's replaceable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Barbara Brandt.
I want to thank you for allowing me this time, and I will be mindful of the constraints. I'm here on behalf of Mark Johnson. My husband and I have lived in Princeton for 30 plus years. Whenever we've needed him, he's been there. He's been very helpful. He seemed to have a very good understanding of where these animals were and how to deal with them. He set up animal containment devices in the yard. He would come every day to check those devices, and this was on more than one occasion. Every time he came, I found him to be very helpful, very courteous, very knowledgeable. He seemed to know quite a lot about where to find the coyotes and the foxes in our neighborhood. He seemed to really love his job and to seem to have respect for the animals that he dealt with, and he certainly knew their habits and their habitats, and was ready to use that knowledge for the good of the community. I am very sorry to see him treated in the way he's treated, and for the voters to be treated as we've been treated. I very much would like to have more transparency in this matter so I can fully understand what precipitated the whole affair. And my concern, from what I've heard and from what I've read in the local papers, which is the only information I have about this, is that this all started with his issuing a ticket. And I find it very hard to believe that he was terminated because he issued a ticket. I do understand, too, that you all do not have to tell us the reason for his termination, but I think it would help to soothe a lot of ill feeling in this community and give us more confidence in our council and our elected officials if we did have some transparency in this issue. And I would like very much to see Mark Johnson reinstated, and I will concede my last minute to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you. And we've Don Day.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Dawn Day, and I live at 99 Meadowbrook Drive in Princeton. I guess I've been around for about 38 years in Princeton, so I have a long experience with Mark Johnson on several rather unpleasant incidents that were not his fault, that were, a dead deer in the yard or whatnot, that he handled in a very fine way. And I really have appreciated his work. I've appreciated his attitude. I have given the council and anyone who likes it a copy of a letter I wrote to Town Topics that explains my view in some detail. Tonight I would like to add an additional thought, and that is the question of how on earth can the deer control program continue? We have someone who has been fired because he gave out tickets trying to implement the program, and so whoever is hired next, if they have any smarts at all, it seems to me, they will not give tickets. Or if they do, they'll give them in the most, in a way that will not implement the program, that will not make anyone angry. So what has happened is a program that has been financed by the, and incidentally, we've already lost over a month. In February would be a good month to handle this problem. We have, so anyway, that's my concern, that we're going to spend a lot of money settling the lawsuit. We're going to spend a lot of money trying to find someone at least as good as he is so that the people that fired him aren't embarrassed. And then, no matter how good he or she is, what eagerness are they going to exhibit enforcing the deer control program? I think the deer control people have lost in the voting in the council and won in the implementation of this action.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just wanted to speak to a couple of issues. I'll take them in reverse order, but specifically with respect to the DEER program. As someone who has been working on this program since its inception and have fought all the legal battles to enable it to continue, I'm very aware of the role that Mark Johnson played in the implementation of this program, and we've already had internal discussions on the importance of making sure that all of those duties and responsibilities are filled. And I've coordinated with the chief. We're continuing to monitor very closely and maintain the statistics on things like the deer vehicle collisions and all the rest. So I do want to assure those who are very supportive and concerned about the program, we share that concern, and we're making sure that all of those duties and responsibilities are going to be filled and filled correctly. With respect to the circumstances of Mark Johnson's separation, we cannot discuss those circumstances, in part out of respect and a need to protect Mark's privacy and his rights. But I want to reinforce what Mr. DeShields said. His separation with Princeton is not due to the issue with the deer summonses.
Thank you.
I was just planning on making a comment similar to our attorneys that while it is true that I was contacted by an acquaintance who had been issued a summons, in no way did that that is not the reason Mark is not employed by Princeton municipality anymore. And there's no one sorrier than I am that Mark is not our animal control officer. I was served well by him prior to being on council and as a council member. I had an irate citizen call me, I referred her to the police, and that is all. That is not the reason Mark Johnson no longer works for us. And anyone else who gets a summons, do not call me. There's nothing I can do about it. I couldn't do anything about theirs, and I can't do anything about yours.
Okay. I'd like to now open it up for anybody else who has a comment on anything that's not already on the agenda.
I just make a comment. I'd like to know why that summons is dismissed. The length
is Robert Dodge, live at 32 Maple Street, Princeton. My public comment this evening addresses the effect that decisions by this council regarding increasing zoning density in the town have on the Princeton Public Schools. Excluding some waivers, the tax levy for a school district may only increase by 2% per year. Since the law passed, the 2% cap law passed, the consumer price index starting in 2011 has gone up by 3.2, 2.1, 1.5, and 1.6 for an average of 2.1% per year. So the costs associated with consumer price index like fuel for buses, heating the building, etc., that 2% increase allows the school district to maintain status quo funding for each student. However, there are numerous reasons why public school budgets do not have a direct link to the consumer price index, and I want to focus on one tonight that's very important in Princeton. And that is the subject of student enrollment. I doubt anyone would question that if additional students come to the district, there will be a cost to educate those additional students. More teachers to maintain student-teacher ratios that make Princeton great, more textbooks, which we hear are so expensive, more bus routes, eventually more space in the form of new construction, more teachers, essentially more of everything. Well, if the 2% state cap on tax levy just covers consumer price index, who is going to pay for the extra cost to maintain excellent quality of the Princeton Public Schools when the additional students, for the additional students that enroll? Okay, there's some good news on that front. The state allows a school district to raise extra money above the 2% cap to pay for additional students enrolled in the district. Unfortunately, according to the Princeton Public School administrators, the amount the state allows a district to raise to cover the cost of a new student does not actually cover the cost of the new student. Stephanie Kennedy, Princeton School District Business Administrator, estimates that only 50% of the cost of a new student are allowed to be funded based on the easiest state guideline formulas. So let's think about the impact in enrollment in Princeton Public Schools. The number in the current school budget is increasing, has increased by 171 new students in the district. With a projected 3,500 students enrolled in the district, that 171 increase in students over the last few years represents a 5% increase in enrollment. Contrary to what was alluded to in the packet and plan of Princeton, the Princeton School District is only going to take a third of the state-allowed 50% increase in funding for those new students next year. So that roughly 5% increase in enrollment next year is funded by an increase of less than 1% in revenues over the 2% cap. And there's more growth coming to town. Each time this council votes to increase density, you are defunding the Princeton Public Schools on a per-child basis. As a community, we need to think about what we are doing to our public schools by constantly increasing housing density and effectively cutting funding on a per-student basis. Yes, okay, for those that can afford it, there are private tutors to be hired, private music teachers are available, numerous good math teachers and math businesses for extra help. There are also many fine private schools in town. But let's not forget the approximately 10% of students in Princeton eligible for free or reduced lunches or family just above that income level, where the thousands of dollars required to supplement a public education outside the public school system is just not feasible. Continuing to increase overcrowding in classrooms, limiting opportunities for programs such as Teach to One for students most in need, putting limits on the percentage of students allowed to participate in top music programs, sports programs, and extracurricular pursuits hurts everyone. I urge the council to strongly consider the negative impact on the Princeton public school system when they increase density in the town, and not to do so until the state changes their policy on funding additional enrollment in New Jersey State's public schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jim Floyd. I reside at 64 Harris Road. It's the block behind the old hospital. I come tonight to express my sincere thanks to Mr. Kaiser and his staff for their oversight on the hospital demolition. I know oftentimes you get more ridiculed than you at least get a word of thanks. And I convey that thanks to you, and there are many others who feel the same way. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Mayor and Council for working with our various community organizations to try to get more affordable housing. Yes, the kids will go to school, and hopefully enhance our diversity. Thank you so much, and I'm well under my 3 minutes.
Thank you doubly for that.
Hello, good evening. I'm Bob DiMartino. I'm from 820 Princeton Kingston Road. Many older Princeton residents who, like me, are now retired share the concerns of my wife and me about where sidewalks are placed in Princeton and how they are paid for. My wife and I have paid our Princeton taxes for almost 25 years, and we're now on fixed incomes and struggling with serious health issues, and are now faced with the additional financial and physical burdens of a sidewalk. As you know, all 7 families directly affected by the sidewalk proposed for Poe Road have signed a petition against it, and we feel that our concerns have not been addressed. And this goes back to the August 4th meeting when Poe residents were told the sidewalk could not be discussed at the public meeting. I truly believe, however, that this never was the intention of the council, and there still is time for the concerns of Poe residents to be considered. For example, shouldn't we be given the same one-side-only option given to residents of every other street where sidewalks were added? These include, if I'm correct, Snowden, Dodds, Tyson, and Roper. Also, how can the council force a sidewalk over the objections of every Poe resident in the name of the public good, and then tell us that we, the private property owner, must pay for any part of it? 5 of our 7 families on Poe consist of handicapped and retired senior citizens, and it is a true hardship to pay for the cost and maintenance of sidewalks while on fixed incomes. Does the council want to set a precedent to older Princeton residents and say that we no longer matter? If the council wants this public works project but does not want to pay for it, how do you think we feel on Poe? Will the council consider a recommendation from Bob Nolan from Rutgers, who is a nationally recognized transportation expert, who feels that the sidewalk can and should be placed out into what is now the current roadway? And I understand, to Mr. Kaiser's credit, that that may now receive some consideration. I believe that everyone on the council truly wants to do the right thing, and therefore, since construction has not yet begun, it is still not too late to allow input from the residents of Poe on this subject. We hope that you will do the fair thing, and thank you for considering these comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell them that we're having the discussion?
We are going, later in the meeting tonight, when we get to the budget, we are going to be discussing different options for sidewalk funding.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Casati. I live at 12 Poe Road. I'm also speaking on the sidewalk project just briefly. 25% of the proposed area is going to go along my property. And I support what Bob has just told you. I just would like to say, you know, I'm a single mom. I'm going to be 65 this year. I established a business in Princeton, the China Human Resources Group. I brought 12 employees into this community. I speak, read, and write Chinese. I donate my time to the police department and the public health care system translating Mandarin for difficult cases. I would like to thank Mr. Kaiser's office for responding to my emails about what the current status is. I'd like to thank President Miller for sending an email answering some of our questions, and thanks to Bob Simon for your phone call. I did get it. I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond to it. Our concerns for this project primarily relate to our rights as property owners. We do not feel that we are being represented. We understand that there is a policy of 50-50 assessment on these sidewalks, but where are our rights getting up to, that's after the fact, determining whether the sidewalks are really needed. Not one family, not one child walks along that particular block to go to any school.
There are no Little Brook School families on that road, and no children from across 27 go to Little Brook School. They're in a different school zone. So we don't understand the argument, first of all, that you think there should be sidewalks for school children. Number two, the cost. We understand the cost, but why would you undertake a project, and why would anyone have to pay for it if it isn't truly needed? There has been no study. We are requesting a study, and we will listen to the results of that study. But we would like our interests as property owners to be, not to be violated in this concern. We do not feel we have been heard. None of the property owners agree with this project. And we do not feel that we should have to pay for it, especially since there's public land on which you could build those sidewalks, and on half of the street if there's a one-side option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can I ask Bob Kaiser a question? Are the sidewalks being built on the private property, or are they on the public right-of-way? I'm asking our engineer this.
The proposed sidewalks as approved by council on both sides of the road are, both sidewalks will be within the municipal right-of-way.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public on items that are not already on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to reports. We'll take the first three reports at once, which is the several nighttime work issues. Oh, do we have somebody here from DOT? Mr. Kaiser, is there somebody here from DOT? Oh, great. Thank you, welcome. So we'll just have you report on the first one then, which is the Route 27 improvement project and the need for nighttime work over the next 4 months.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council and staff for Princeton. I bring you greetings on behalf of the New Jersey Department of Transportation in the absence of our Commissioner, Jamie Foxx. We have been invited here by Bob Kaiser to give you an overview as to what's going to take place with night work on the Route 27 improvement project. I will turn the mic over to my project manager, which is Omar Ahib, and he will then introduce our residential engineer, and he can tell you who the contractor is. And if there's any major questions or concerns, we may not have all the answers tonight, but we would like to have them in writing from Bob's office that we can address them to you and go over your answers that you will need. Sure. But at this time, I'll turn it over to him, and we'll move forward.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and fellow council members. My name is Omar Hamid. I represent the Division of Project Management at the New Jersey Department of Transportation. The Division of Project Management is advancing a construction project that resurfaces portions of Route 27 here in Princeton and also in Franklin and South Brunswick Townships. The character and nature of Route 27, the traffic volumes and the businesses that are on Route 27 preclude daytime work, which includes closure of traffic lanes. We know what type of congestion and problems that may cause for the townships. So we've been given by our traffic engineering and traffic operations division hours that the contractor who's performing this resurfacing work can work on the road, and that is predominantly at night. The hours that they have given us provides for a 4-hour window during the day, but for the contractor who's working on a schedule where the entire project is scheduled to be completed by the end of June, having 4 hours to do milling and repaving and curb work and ramp work for the ADA portion of the project, the schedule would stretch into the middle of summer and probably into the fall. So we come asking that council authorizes that the department be allowed to work on Route 27 on this project at night from basically 9:00 p.m. to 6:00 in the morning the next day. The resident engineer, who's the day-to-day supervisor of the project, is Darshan Patel. If you have any questions about the schedule and the items of work that will be being done in the project, I'll have him address those for you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darshan Patel. I represent NJDOT. I do not have anything to add from what Omar said. Only thing I would like to add is that when we are working at nights, I have a numerous conversation with Robert. We'll do our best to inform township on a daily basis and a weekly basis. That's all I have.
Yeah, Mr. Kaiser?
Madam Mayor and Council, perhaps I can ask just a couple of questions. I know the request came in for a 4-month construction time with the work hours from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was considered by our traffic safety unit of the police department. The police department recommends the nighttime work because they feel that it's much better to have the nighttime work as opposed to shut down the road during rush hour and so forth, and they're also very interested in having the work completed quickly. But the question is, do you have any sense as to how much of that 4-month period collectively would be in Princeton? Because I know most of the project is further to the north on Route 27.
Paul, would you like to briefly explain that? Paul is our contractor.
How you doing? Paul Shapana from Shapana Construction, the contractor for the project. Basically, all the way up until the end of June, beginning of July, we'll be in and out of Princeton. So, probably something like a 2-week window in April doing concrete work, electrical work, some full depth repair, base repair, and then I would say another around 2 weeks. Can't tell you exactly, but in May or June to do the milling and paving work, and then just little work, a couple other nights in town to finish up some striping, some final cleanup, stuff like that. But probably altogether, maybe a total of 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. But it's going to be sporadic because we're going to be going up in South Brunswick, back into Princeton for each particular item on our bid. So, on our contract.
So during that 4 to 6 week.
Oh, sorry. Sure. No, sorry.
So my question is, during that 4 to 6 week period of time, Paul, do you have any sense as to what portion of that you would be in Princeton?
That's what I
versus other
mean.
locations?
Around like 4 to 6 weeks within Princeton.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 25%, 30% of the time.
I'd say about 30% of the job. Maybe 40, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we should be out either here or in South Brunswick all the way until June, and about, like I said, 30 to 40% of this project is within Princeton.
Ms. Howard, do you have a question?
I do. Well, first of all, just thank you. I don't know, I've never observed state folks coming. Maybe we haven't had this route. This is amazing. So
First
please
time.
thank Commissioner Fox for being so attentive. And it feels like an opportunity that we shouldn't miss when we have state officials in front of us. Yes, call your colleagues, yes. No, it's not a criticism. It's just a plea. And I don't know if... I've always heard a lot of people calling for an additional sidewalk on 27 when it becomes Nassau Street inside Harrison, because a lot of people are crossing, another crosswalk, just painting the white lines because a lot of kids are crossing around there. And can we get the state to think about that, because it's a state road, right? I know you can't give us an answer now, but can I put that on your agenda since you're being so solicitous?
If you have any specific requests or concerns about sidewalk or issues like that.
No, not sidewalk, I'm sorry, crosswalk, just painting the...
And crosswalks. We ask that you put them in writing and send them to, you can send them to me.
Okay.
I'm the project manager for this section of Route 27. I'll leave you my card. Putting in writing a formalized request, because crosswalks involve ADA.
Mm-hmm.
And when
you gotta have curb cuts, you mean?
when we get to ADA, there's specific regulations that we have to follow, so we have to look at that and study that before we say yes or no.
I
So we
believe
ask
that-
that you put that in writing.
I believe there already is a written request, and Ms. Stockton is prepared for a crosswalk.
Okay, so then I'll make a plea for consideration of that request. How's that? but really, thank Commissioner Fox. This is terrific that you guys have taken the time for such a team to come out.
I'd like to add to Councilwoman Howard's plea and ask that you give consideration to the possibility of improving the lighting at the crosswalks so that the crosswalks are illuminated after dark. In many instances, the crosswalks are poorly illuminated, and people who cross at dusk or after dark put themselves at risk. And can I ask a further question? Do you plan to close both lanes on 27 when you're working, or will one lane be open for traffic?
One lane only will be closed. There'll be alternating traffic.
Is there any possibility that you could be more specific about where you will be working and when so that we can put it on our website?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we'll be notifying the township on a weekly basis. We'll give a schedule for the next 5 days, and on top of that, we'll send what's happening, every other day. Meaning, if today's Monday, we'll send a schedule, hopefully by the end of the day, Monday, of what's happening on Tuesday. That's our best way to inform you. We don't have nothing is set in stone yet, because things change so much, whether it be weather or work. So no, we do not have a confirmed locations of where we will be alternating the traffic.
It seems to me that you might be able to think this through to the point where you can say, weather permitting, on Monday of one week, as of Monday the following week, this is the section of 27 that you'll be working on. I don't think that's too much to ask.
And if I could just comment, if we could coordinate, we could work to get that information on the website and get it out as necessary.
Yeah, okay.
It's my understanding you're going to get our weekly TIR reports, so you will have that information weekly that you can share with your council.
Okay, and if we have any questions, we can speak. Sure. Good. And also, I'd just like to comment that Deanna Stockton, who's here, she made a request of a number of items for consideration, including the crosswalk and quite a number of other items, and we're working to set up a meeting with Omar to review those items.
Thank you.
Mr. Livernon?
Yeah, excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you so much. The worst part of the job, I take it, worst meaning for our residents would be the milling. That's the worst part. So I think that's the most sensitive part, because that's the loudest part. And that's what everyone's going to hear. That's extremely loud. So if you can at least find out when that's taking place, that will be a key help for us.
Yes.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
This team will notify our office, and we will get it out to Bob. Bob can get it to you all. We're also implementing somehow that we can send out literature to the residents prior to it happening, so that they will be aware that the milling is going to start. In that letter, I cannot say how long it's going to take because it will be predicted upon weather. But we definitely do plan on trying to implement that, so people will be notified at a timely manner.
One other thing I'd like to mention is Department of Transportation recently resurfaced Route 206, made the same sort of request and so forth. Schifano Construction, same contractor, did the work, and it worked out very well for the milling, resurfacing, and improvement of 206, which was done this past year.
Great. Ms. Crummer?
Oh, this is just not for you. This is for my colleagues about, when you were talking about lighting, the Traffic Safety Committee talks about lighting and crosswalks. And so I just wanted you to know, tell me or tell Bob Kaiser, and also the Traffic and Transportation Committee sometimes deals with that. But right now, Jack West was, I know, going out and checking actually the lighting and various crosswalks. And so it's something that somebody is looking at. So we should probably tell Bob to put in the request for the 206, because aren't you doing that weren't we thinking about some other places that we were going to request lighting?
Yes, and we'll be discussing those items on this project as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to Police Center. Thanks to Commissioner Fox, too. We sympathize with everybody who lives in the area. It is going to be noisy at times over the next 4 months. And we'll try to do our best on our end to keep people informed and give them a heads up when it's happening. And we have a couple other nighttime work projects coming up too. So for those, turn over to Mr. Kaiser.
Yes, also, there's work that's planned on Witherspoon Street between Paul Robinson and Spring Street. And our police department met with the contractor, PSC&G, and felt that it would be much better to do this work at nighttime rather than during the day. And as a result, there's a request to work tomorrow evening between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. They're hoping that they can get the work completed in one night, but if necessary, work a second night as well. And they felt it would be advantageous to have this work done at night rather than tie up Witherspoon Street during critical daytime periods.
A question about that. Are they resurfacing? Is that what's going to be?
This work is just simply to provide a new electrical service.
No, it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with.
No, that doesn't have anything to do with resurfacing. So they need to trench entirely across the street, get the conduit in, and then backfill the area. So again, they're hoping to do it Monday if necessary, Tuesday if for some reason there's, or Tuesday, and then Wednesday if for some reason there's bad weather, shift it. But maximum of two-night period.
If we can use the emergency phone notification system for all of these projects to the degree that we can, just to notify the neighborhood, I think it helps. You know, even if people are going to be inconvenienced, just knowing it ahead of time so you're not waking up in the middle of the night not knowing what's going on, I think is appreciated. So that'd be useful to do it as far in advance as we can. And there's Mount Lucas Road.
Okay. In addition, we have a couple other items. The Mount Lucas Road improvement project is scheduled to start this next Monday, and the first work would be installing a storm sewer across Cherry Hill Road, the section of Cherry Hill right between 206 and Mount Lucas. And due to the high volume of traffic there, again, our police department recommends that work be done during the night, and that is proposed, weather permitting, next Monday night and next Tuesday night. And we just wanted to notify council of that, and we'll be discussing that at the neighborhood meeting that's scheduled for this Thursday evening with the neighbors in the area as well.
Okay, thank you.
In addition, a couple other items I have relating to the reports. There's a meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening, neighborhood meeting regarding the Transco pipeline, and that's at 7 o'clock in this room. And then Thursday evening to discuss Mount Lucas Improvement Project, that's at 7 o'clock as well. And in addition, we have scheduled a meeting for Hamilton Avenue. That work is scheduled to start on April 13th, so we'd have a neighborhood meeting with the Hamilton neighbors on April 7th at 7 o'clock here in this room to brief them on the construction work that's anticipated to take approximately 2 weeks. There's concrete sidewalk work needed, some drainage improvements, and then milling and resurfacing of the roadway. In addition, looking ahead, once the contractor finishes that work, they're looking to move to Poe Road, and we're looking to confirm a neighborhood meeting the following week with the Poe Road neighbors, and also I know council is going to be discussing the funding relating to the sidewalks, but also it'd be helpful to have a sense from council as to whether they wishes to consider going back and working with the neighbors to consider sidewalks on one side of the road versus two sides of the road. Engineering department can certainly go either way on that, but we're just looking for some sort of a sense in that regard.
Is there a sense from council tonight?
No, I think we've talked about this before, and we think we should have them on both sides.
I think that's right. That we're thinking about this for a generation ahead and making sure that there will be accessibility and walkability. I'm going to be supportive of the funding changes, but I don't think we change this.
Well, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we did discuss this, but if I'm wrong...
I vaguely remember that conversation, too. And I think part of the reason was because there's already sidewalks on both sides of the street leading up to the point where there's no sidewalks, and I think that was one of the main motivations behind...
Well, I had recalled a split decision within council, and it was, I thought it was ambiguous in terms of our instructions to the engineering staff, which is why I asked Mr. Kaiser to bring it up again today.
Okay.
Just for the record, I'm in favor of sidewalks on one side of the road if there's agreement within the neighborhood on how it can be handled, both in terms of which side, because that side has to handle the maintenance, and also on how the costs would be split, if there are any costs.
Okay. Are there any feelings from others on council?
With Mr. Simon.
Okay.
I disagree. I don't know why, we don't say, oh, why don't we make this road just one lane and make the cars go down one lane? You know, we never say that about cars, but we say people can cross the street.
Well, I want to
kids.
finish polling the rest of council to see if it's where we are.
Go ahead. I really don't have a strong feeling about this. I didn't know we were going to be asked to speak or give an opinion about this tonight, and I haven't studied the master plan. With regard to this issue, sidewalks on both sides are called for in the master plan. Is that correct?
The master plan just simply calls for sidewalks. In the former township, that's been interpreted generally one side of the road. In some cases, we've had two sides of the road, but the master plan is not specific one side or two sides.
Bob, was there an agreement with the neighbors? I know this is back in August 2014, but was there an agreement for one side of the road or for no sidewalks at all? I keep forgetting.
What?
Was there an agreement for one side of the road to have sidewalks, or?
We agreed to have both sides.
I can partially answer that question. Mr. DiMartino, who was here tonight, came before us in December. Sure. Came before us in December and asked whether one side of the road was still an option, and he did not get clear advice at that time from us. And speaking to him since then, he was waiting for advice from council before bringing a request from the residents, and I thought that both engineering and the council were waiting for the residents to take initiative. So I saw sort of a circle where nobody was going to move, and we were going to end up with two sides of the road simply because everybody assumed the answer was that somebody else was going to take the initiative. And so Mr. DiMartino made the request tonight, and so did Ms. Casati, and I think we owe the staff and the residents some guidance as to our sense of this.
Well, I also am sympathetic to people not knowing that this was going to come up, and I don't want to put someone on the spot. So let me ask Mr. Kaiser when you need the direction from council, if you need it right this second, or if you can have it on April 13th.
April 13th will work. We'll certainly need to have a final decision at that point because we're looking for the contractor to start the following Monday on the construction work.
Okay. Well, then I would ask anybody who is still on the fence, you have 3 weeks to consider.
To whom can we speak? Who can clarify this issue about the intent of the master plan? I mean, I'm not an expert on sidewalks. I really am relying on our master plan document. So help me out here. Who is the person whose talents we can tap to get some advice on this?
Well, it sounds like it was unclear. It sounds like we're being given the discretion.
Well, maybe somebody people adopted this master plan. Somebody must have
Well, I think at the time they did, it was the policy, as Bob just said.
Right, that's what I want to know, is how was the policy?
But what I'm saying is I don't...
wasn't adopted, it was with the intent to provide flexibility.
But I'd like to point out that there have been many instances where we've started the process of sidewalks, looking at the possibility of sidewalks on both sides of the road. And after asking the residents along the road if they could work together, and in some instances share the cost, we've agreed to put the sidewalks on one side of the road, not on both.
I'll just jump in. That may, Bernie, you may be referring to, was that in the former township? Because my experience in the borough...
That was the township, yeah.
Okay. So I have still bear the scars from from a case we all worked on in the borough, where it was a dead-end street, one-block street, and the question was whether putting on the second side. And we decided that, given Complete Streets and our commitment to walkability, we would put on both sides, and that we really need to think about the next generation in the next 25 years, since this is really a once-in-generation opportunity to fix the roads. And so I hope, given that we've been having a lot of discussions about Complete Streets and our commitment to following through with Complete Streets, this seems an opportunity for us to make a statement for walkability.
I don't mean to cut off any of my colleagues, but we'll discuss it again on April 13th, and we do have a lot of other things that are on the agenda, so I want to keep moving. And I do encourage anybody who is trying to figure it out to go and visit and walk down the street and use your own eyes, at least, to see what you think.
Can I simply ask, Mr. Kaiser, you had mentioned several dates for meetings. I caught Hamilton Avenue 47, Poe Road. Do you have a date for that, for the meeting with residents?
Yes, for Poe Road, we're looking, we haven't confirmed it yet, April 15th. And that would be the meeting with the contractor, and if everything goes well, we would look for the contractor to start that following Monday.
Thank you.
Do you have any other reports, Mr. Kaiser?
A follow-up report regarding the hospital work. Work is proceeding. Unuzi is working on grinding up the concrete material that's there. They still have some retaining walls to remove and so forth. And also the site contractor, Mountain View Construction, has started, and you may have noticed a new gate. They've installed the new driveway that's being used as construction access, and they're starting to do preliminary site work. And we're following up, monitoring the work, and also our own inspector is inspecting the work this week, but he'll be starting on the Mount Lucas Road project, and Whitman will start doing inspection next Monday, a week from today.
Mr. Kaiser, can I ask a question? What does the site contractor do? What are their responsibilities? How long do we expect the site contractor to be there?
Site contractor will be on the job between now until the work is completed. They are responsible for installing the foundations for the building areas, to do all the removal of the underground utilities, to install the new utilities, to strip the topsoil and stockpile it per our agreement and so forth, to grade the entire site, and then to bring in and truck in new topsoil as needed, install the parking lots, and install the landscaping. So that site contractor will be here for the next year and a half, if not longer.
Have you worked with this company before?
I have not worked with them, but we've received good reports, and our inspector that we hired a few months ago has worked with them and had a very good working relationship with them. So we're pleased at this point with this site contractor.
Will there be a resident Avalon Bay person on site as well?
Yes, there will be. And as I said, the Whitman firm is going to be doing the engineering inspection for us as well as the work proceeds.
Thank you. And now we come to our police report, our monthly police report for January 2015. I'd like to welcome Chief Sutter.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple brief announcements I want to bring to your attention. I recently attended a meeting of the Princeton Merchants Association, and from that meeting there was a lot of good dialogue, and we came to the conclusion that we should have more interaction between the police department and our local merchants. So we're starting with a meeting this April, the date to be announced, between our Safe Neighborhoods unit and members of the local merchants. And we hope to keep this going periodically so that we're proactive and address the concerns of our local merchants as we do with the rest of our community. So those are some recurring meetings that are going to occur. On that same note, with regard to community meetings, we are scheduling a series of coffee with a cop sessions. I say coffee with a cop, not coffee and donuts with a cop, as some have referred to it. It's coffee, tea if you'd like. We're going to set them up about 4 times throughout 2015 in different areas of the community. And I invite our residents to come out because it's a really good opportunity for you to speak to our officers individually. Every single one of our officers in the department will in some way be involved in one of these meetings, which encourages community policing within our department and allows our residents direct access to our police officers. So you look forward to that coming. We will advertise and announce that as we move forward. And finally, my last announcement is that the 2014 annual report for the police department is completed, and I'm hoping to disseminate that this week. I will forward a copy to Mr. DeShield, and we'll disseminate it and get it up on our website.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Thanks, Chief. Two questions. One, it looks like from the monthly report in January, there was a fairly significant increase in traffic enforcement, and this coincides with, I've had several friends comment that they feel like they've seen more cars pulling cars over, which probably is going to be good news to a lot of people, because I know one of the top complaints we hear is about speeding and other violations. But am I reading the report correctly? What's happening there?
You are. As I've said before, I think there's several things going on here. One is our first year and a half of after consolidation was really just getting operations. We were concentrating on operations, and while there was proactive work being done, there were so many other things going on that we didn't have time to specifically concentrate on these things. Throughout the last 2 years or so, we've gotten a lot of community feedback, and as you've said, a majority of that feedback relates to traffic issues, whether it be speeding, pedestrian issues, crosswalk issues, and our traffic safety unit is taking a proactive stance in this regard, and we've implemented a new strategy where our traffic safety unit is regularly updating our patrol units with problem areas where a lot of complaints are coming in. And so we're trying to supplement our traffic units' work with patrol officers. And, again, that's the residents and the community dictating what our priorities are, and that's the overwhelming majority of concerns that we get from the public. So we're really trying to make our presence known there.
The U.S. Department of Justice released their report on their civil rights investigation that came about in the aftermath of the tragic events in Ferguson, Missouri. And the report itself, we've talked about this, chronicles really a breakdown, a complete breakdown between in the relationship between the law enforcement and the community they're serving in Ferguson. And I know we have it on the agenda for our Public Safety Committee, but given how much interest there is in the community, would you be willing to comment on your thoughts on the report?
Absolutely. I've actually have a copy here. I was reading it before the meeting. I've read it several times, and there's a lot of things that are obviously concerning, but I guess in all bad, something good must come from it, and that's the kind of viewpoint that we're looking at, that we should be proactive and take some lessons from this report. It's an opportunity for us to learn, and there's many things that are mentioned in the report, suggestions or things that weren't being done in that community that we are doing and have been doing for a very long time. And the number one thing that came out of that report is the responsibility of the police department to be proactive in the community from a community policing standpoint, not necessarily from an enforcement standpoint. And to make first contacts with law enforcement positive contacts, not negative contacts. There are some other very glaring issues that come out of the report that, thank goodness, we aren't experiencing, but there are some things we can do better and take suggestions from. So I'm actually going to prepare a kind of a report to myself and things that we can take from it and use those lessons to do some training within the department. We already have some training initiatives set up that came from information from that report. So there's a lot to be learned from it.
Terrific. Thank you.
I didn't read that report. I mean, was the issue of body cams addressed in that report? And have you considered that?
So that's very interesting. I actually have that on the public safety agenda for this week. I'll just say in the last 2 weeks, I've spoken with the Mercer County Prosecutor's Office and with the Attorney General's Office regarding the implementation of body cameras. And I guess I can say that it's on the forefront of the Attorney General's set of priorities. So what we've kind of been instructed to do is, I've been looking at this for quite some time. I went as far as talking to our PBA about what their stance was on it, and we're overwhelmingly in favor of body cameras. There's going to be a state guideline coming out on them at some point, probably this year is what we're told. So we've been asked to wait for that direction, and there's funding involved and the such, so we want to see what kind of statutory requirements come out of it, what's left to us, and then make a decision from there.
Ms. Butler?
Yes. You expect the strategic plan, when is it expected?
So we've been going back and forth for some time now. I expected it by now. We've been having a lot of conversations about more of the detail that they're actually writing it. It's actually written, and there's some adjustments and things. There's actually information still coming into them, believe it or not, via telephone from some residents and other stakeholders that is now being included. So I expect it any time now. I spoke to them as recently as Friday. So I thought it would be here last week. I'm thinking it'll be here this week, and then in a draft format, and we can move forward from there, but definitely within any moment.
The draft format comes to the police department, and then you review it, or the draft comes to us, or?
My theory was to, I'll get the draft and disseminate it through public safety to council and get some feedback, and it's a transparent document. We want as much input as we possibly can get on it, so whatever the suggestion is of who needs to take a look at that draft, it's everybody that's driving those strategies, so it's not me, I'm just part of it, so.
Okay. Do you want to comment? The Daily Princetonian has been quite active covering the situation with the police and the agent arresting for violation of underage purchase of alcohol.
Yeah, I will comment. I'm trying to think of how to say this most tactfully. The report that was written regarding the underage drinking investigations contained a lot of, quite frankly, not factual information with regards to the data that was put in there. We don't know where some of the data came from. Some things in there were accurate, and the overwhelming majority were not. I quite personally feel that underage drinking is a national issue. It's a issue that the state provides grant money to us for to investigate and enforce. And I personally feel, as a police officer, the best intervention into underage drinking is before it occurs, at the point where it's purchased illegally, not after it's purchased and consumed and we have a medical issue. So quite frankly, there was, it's discouraging that the writer saw the perspective or wrote the perspective that was put in that report. There's a whole other perspective out there that wasn't addressed, which is the public safety issue and the issue of underage drinking, the dangers of it, how it leads to addiction, and all these other issues that early intervention prevent. So that's more of the stance that we're taking in the department.
Would it be possible to get a memo from you sort of outlining the actual facts, number of arrests or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually we track them internally, and we also track them for the state under their guidelines, so I'll give you both.
Thanks.
Mr. Simon?
Chief Sutter, following up on the question of body cams, and actually I'm not sure if this should be directed to you or to Mr. DeShield, but the question is, do we expect those to have a significant impact on the budget, and if so, have we started planning for that? Do we expect body cams to have a potentially significant impact on the budget, and if so, have we started planning for that?
I've actually looked at them in terms of their fiscal impact, and they actually integrate with our current mobile vehicle systems. So basically, we can get just the camera and not reinvent the wheel. All these companies are moving in that direction, and I think it'll probably be nothing astronomical, something very feasible, considering what it gives us, and we can easily, I think I can predict that cost when we get the guidelines that come down from the state and what's mandatory and what isn't and what we choose to do. But I don't see it being something that's a huge impact on the budget.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just budgets are on our minds.
I totally understand, and we've already anticipated that,
All right,
that issue.
In the same vein, I noticed that the overtime costs were a little bit high in January versus a year ago.
Yes.
Can you tell us what was driving that and whether we should expect that going forward?
Absolutely. So there's two issues regarding overtime. One is the dispatch overtime, and one is the patrol officer overtime. So let me talk about dispatch, which I can clear up very quickly. We anticipate that to be drastically and significantly decreased moving forward. Probably start to see it in this past February, and starting March, you'll see a steep decline. And that is because of the personnel that has given us a relief factor that we never had before. So that hadn't hit yet in January. They were still in training. They came off training in mid-February. I've been tracking overtime and looking at overtime very closely with my staff from a patrol standpoint. All of the overtime that you're seeing in the Patrol Bureau is coming from shortages. Now, let me say this. We don't create shortages knowingly, meaning we don't schedule vacation. We control vacation very strictly. We have a policy in which how many officers can have off at one time. We never leave a squad short where we create our own overtime. But what does happen is when you take into consideration training, extra days off, and every other thing that factors into an officer's responsibilities, court, our squads operate at a minimum, and that being the minimum that we require on the road. I went as far as this year to speaking with, doing a little bit of an internal study and speaking with the PBA about our patrol minimums, and we did a little bit of a, I don't want to call it an experiment, but we looked at what would happen if we lowered the minimum amount of officers required on the road on a shift. And we did that in an interim. And it had no effect. And the reason why it had no effect is if you require 10 officers on a shift, and you have 15 available to you, inevitably, you're going to have so many at training, you're going to have so many on days off, and inevitably there's an unforeseen circumstance like sick time, and you go short. So whether that number is 10 or 3, it seems to not affect it. So with that being said, we're not real, and this may not be great news, but we're not real sure of any trend or reason for the patrol overtime going where it is. There's not any trends like misuse of sick time. Sick time is under control, or we have orders in place and reviews in place that monitor sick time. It just seems that when you counterbalance all of the time off that has to be granted and all the responsibilities outside of the patrol work, and then you factor in any sick time, things like funeral leave, unanticipated leaves, we go short, and that creates a mandatory call-in and overtime, and that's what you're seeing there. January, I will say, was a month in which sick time was up in the department, and due to illnesses that went throughout the department. So with that being said, it was a little elevated, so we should see that come down as the year goes. But we're looking at it regularly. We speak as a staff. I speak with the PBA about different initiatives, and we're trying to get a grip on it and see where that number, I don't want to say should be, but will be. That's really the best answer I can give you on that right now.
All right, thank you.
Are there any questions for the chief? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And are there council reports? Any council reports? Ms. Howard? Ms. Crumbeller? Mr. Miller?
I have a brief report on the 2015 Deer Management Program, which was completed earlier this month. A total of 250 deer, about twice the total removed in each of the past years, were harvested by our contractor, White Buffalo, and this number met our objective for this year's program. Unlike past recent years, the weather cooperated, and the deer that were harvested by White Buffalo were processed, and the venison was donated to New Jersey food kitchens. There were two factors that were outside of the control of our contractor that reduced the efficiency of the program. The first of these involved the members of the United Bowhunters of New Jersey hunting at bait sites that were established by White Buffalo. And when this occurred, White Buffalo abandoned the sites so that there would be no conflict with the bowhunters. The bowhunters harvested a total of 14 deer and made a negligible contribution to our deer control program. And this is very similar to past years. A second issue is one that saw some discussion earlier this evening, and that is that there were two instances of individuals who were attempting to lure the deer away from sites that White Buffalo had baited for the purpose of attracting the deer. And both the interference by the bowhunters and the feeding of deer by residents really reduced the efficiency of our program. They cost us money, or they reduce the number of deer that we can harvest. In 2016, we're going to try and deal with the first of these, the overlapping with the bowhunters, to set up propose non-overlapping hunt periods so that the bowhunters and our contractor don't appear at the same sites at the same time. We've tried in the past to use educational methods to discourage our residents from interfering with the deer control program, and we'll continue to emphasize this in 2016. And I must point out that it is extraordinarily difficult to prove that anyone is trying to bait the deer away from the sites that are set up by White Buffalo. It has to be witnessed. It has to have firm, documented evidence that that is taking place, and unless that can be provided, it is very difficult to enforce the feeding ordinance. However, I'm sure that the vast majority of our residents understand what we're trying to do with the deer management program and will comply and try not to interfere with the program in 2016. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lieberman, any reports?
No reports.
Ms. Butler?
No reports.
And Mr. Simon?
Yes, two brief reports. The first is with respect to the... Sure. The first of my two reports is with respect to the Environmental Commission. And a topic that came up, and I know it's come up in other committees and task forces as well, is the question of when the commission takes some action, for example, produces a memo for council, like the waste memo they produced earlier this year, what happens next? And so I actually asked the chair of the commission, Matt Wasserman, to sit down with myself and Mark DeShiel to talk through, well, what should happen next? Okay, and so I'm using this as an illustration, but I think we're going to have the same kind of question come up from other committees as well. The Environmental Commission is going to present the waste memo at a future council meeting, and what we've proposed is that they get the feedback from us in terms of what parts we're prepared to endorse, what parts we may want to say, hold on, it might be a little bit more than we think the town can handle, or worth considering, but we need more research. And then given the overlap of topic, what I suggested for that particular follow-up is that we then follow up with the Public Works Committee and invite representatives from the Environmental Commission to the Public Works Committee to discuss that. So the general problem, which I think we've heard from a number of committees, is how to follow up, and we're trying to work through maybe a better way of doing it in a way that is responsive to the work of the Environmental Commission. So I wanted to relay that on. With respect to the Emergency Management Commission, the Local Emergency Management Committee, I just wanted to let the members of council and the public know that we're working on following up on the mutual aid agreements and the sort of the chain of command when different organizations within Princeton respond to the same event, and making sure that that's very clear what the chain of command is there. And we're also working on following up on whether we can get a dedicated paramedic unit into Princeton, either permanently or at least in cases of emergencies that we can plan ahead for. So I just wanted to let people know that those are things that the committee is working on.
Great, thank you. I had a few reports. The first one is that I forgot to issue a proclamation at the beginning of the meeting that I want to do for the record so we can apply for another grant. And that's to proclaim April as 2015 Walk and Bike to School Month, whereas state and local governments and school districts encourage and promote healthy and active lifestyles for students and residents of the state of New Jersey. And whereas this commemoration shall provide an opportunity for students in Princeton to walk and bicycle safely to and from school with a strong effort to promote and encourage healthy and active lifestyles and create safe environmental conditions for students and residents to walk and bike to school and around town. Now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor of the Municipality of Princeton, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey, do hereby proclaim April as 2015 Walk and Bike to School Month in Princeton, New Jersey, and urge all students, parents, teachers, administrators, schools, and school districts in Princeton to participate in walking and biking events and to consider the safety and health of pedestrians and bicyclists this day and every day. And then I have a few more reports in addition to that. First, I wanted to thank Princeton University. Several weeks ago, we had a major snowstorm, one of many, and at that point, the municipality was running very, very low on salt. We had expected a large salt delivery that hadn't come on time. The university gave us salt to use, and when we finally got the delivery and we're going to return what we had borrowed, they said, "Don't worry about it. It was yours." So I wanted to thank them for their generosity and for helping us out in a pinch and keeping us all safer. A few events coming up. I've been working with the library and some other folks around town who are interested in bringing to Princeton our first municipal hackathon, which is actually a good event. The name scares some people, but it's really, it's also called like the National Day of Civic Coding, and it's going to be on the weekend of June 6th and 7th. So for folks that are interested in building apps or computer programming or just want to observe, that should be a fun community event. I am also going to be involved with something called Conversation of a Lifetime, which is a pilot project of the Mayor's Wellness Campaign to promote community conversation around advanced care planning. Princeton is one of 3 towns in New Jersey that's been selected to do a pilot project on this, and the goal is to encourage more individuals to document their wishes for end-of-life care in writing and to make their wishes known to loved ones and caregivers. We're going to be partnering with the Senior Resource Center, with the library, Community Without Walls, and other groups, and there's going to be a kickoff event on April 16th at the Public Library, and the New Jersey State Health Commissioner will be there. He's also a Princeton resident, Mary O'Dowd. So please look out for information about that. I'm going to be holding my monthly Meet the Mayor open office hours this Friday morning from 8:30 to 10 a.m. in the lobby of the Princeton Public Library. And I don't know if there's any other reports from staff. No? Okay. All right. Now we're going to move on to the presentation for tonight from Shirley Bishop, who's our affordable housing consultant. And
Good evening.
I'm going to pass it on to you.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Yes. Good. It's always a pleasure to come to Princeton. And tonight I'd like to give you an overview of the New Jersey Supreme Court opinion. As you're all aware, on March 10th of this year, the Supreme Court issued an opinion that stated since COA and the legislature have been unable to act, now any compliance with the Mount Laurel decision will revert back to the courts, which means that all of the towns will have to go through the Superior Court process to have their plans reviewed and receive a judgment of compliance. The opinion divided the municipalities into two types. One would be the participating municipality, and the other would be a certified municipality. And Princeton falls into the participating municipality category because both the former borough and the former township adopted third round plans, filed the plans with COA, and they were never certified. In addition, what the court said that the order of March 10th would not become effective until 90 days, and the 90 days would begin on June 8th. And during that time, between June 8th and July 8th, the towns may file a declaratory judgment action with the court, asking for the court to grant temporary immunity. And Princeton will be filing a declaratory judgment action, and in that action, Princeton will request temporary immunity, include the information on the consolidation of both the borough and the township, a narrative of all of the affordable housing activities that you have undertaken since 2008, when was the last time your plan was submitted to COA, and also both of your adopted plans, and ask the court to review and approve a consolidated spending plan, which COA has failed to do so far, and which Princeton needs. And then you will ask the court to request, you will file a motion to request 5 months to provide a supplemental housing plan and a new housing element. And that would be due November 8th of this year. Now, in the opinion, the court said that the Superior Court is to review favorably on plans that were adopted and also had implementing ordinances. The good news is that Princeton falls into that category. You have been proactive. Even though you did not have third round numbers, you moved forward, and you moved forward to have affordable housing provided in consolidated Princeton. And I think you're in very good shape to be granted temporary immunity during that period. What you should also know, if you haven't heard, Fair Share Housing Center, which is an advocacy group, has developed affordable housing obligations for all municipalities in the state of New Jersey. The prospective need obligations run from 1999 to 2024. So the obligations are a 25-year obligation. I have to note that this is an advocacy group. There is no imprimatur on these particular numbers. In fact, when COA came out with its third iteration of the third round rules, they gave a statewide affordable housing need of approximately 41,000 units. The Fair Share Housing Center statewide need is 200,000 units for the entire state for the 25 years. What you should also know is that Princeton will carefully look at the number that was given. What Fair Share Housing Center did was give Princeton two numbers, one for the borough and one for the township. And together, they total 888 units. Somewhere in between that 40 and the 200,000, 40,000 and 200,000 is probably the number. But the main goal for Princeton, I believe, is that you put together a plan that's realistic and that's implementable, and you go to the court with that particular plan. You also have met your second round obligation, totally court-approved or COA-approved, so that's in place, and that's an absolute plus for you. We will be discussing a process, discussing a timeline for implementation, but I think you're all aware that the Princeton Regional Planning Board will be adopting the housing element and the Fair Share Plan. The council endorses the adopted housing element and the Fair Share Plan. And actually, I believe there is a master plan subcommittee that will probably be looking at the housing element. I think, to close, that Princeton is in very good shape applying for a declaratory judgment action because of your proactive and aggressive stand on providing affordable housing for the residents of Princeton. Any questions?
I want to start off with just a couple questions. I know you're really immersed in this, so some of the jargon I just wanted to make sure we all understand. So when we're filing for this temporary immunity, what immunity from what?
Immunity from an exclusionary zoning lawsuit. A builder's remedy.
From builder's remedy lawsuit, okay.
Well, can you expand on that? Just what is that exactly?
I think that somebody can come in and build something without regards to our zoning. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then, do we need, in terms of what council's going to need to review and approve, that's going to be closer to the end of this process then? It'll be closer to November when there's a full plan, or are we going to be, are things going to be coming to us?
No, the next time I come to you, I will come with a process and a timeline. We are beginning right now and moving forward, even though we don't have particular numbers. But what you should know is David Kinsey, who is one of the authors of the plan, called me this morning to tell me that they are, because they gave you two separate numbers, they are revisiting the Princeton numbers and consolidating them to see what the actual numbers are.
Wait, who is?
David Kinsey.
No, I mean, who is?
Fair Share Housing.
Fair Share Housing is doing that?
Yes.
And what role does Fair Share Housing have? I mean, you said that they weren't official, but it sounds like they are.
They're a housing advocacy group, and in the absence of the state coming up with numbers, they have just jumped into the void.
And everyone's listening to them, I take it.
They're looking at the numbers. That's not saying they agree with them. The court also said that the towns could also propose their own numbers.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Liebman?
Yeah, thank you, Shirley, as always, thank you. Do those numbers include, like, rehabs, things of that sort?
No, the rehab number is separate.
Is there a number?
That's a good question, because for the first iteration of the third round rules, they gave rehab numbers. For the second iteration, there are different rehab numbers. I mean, there has to be a solid rehab number, which at this point, no one really knows.
I would know.
Yeah, Ms. Carter?
Is there any way to provide affordable housing besides building new units? Like,
Yes.
Can you give rent subsidies, for instance?
What you can do, you can have group homes. You can provide a market to affordable program whereby you take existing homes that are just above the moderate income level and write them down so they're affordable to a lower or moderate income household. Those are and there's also redevelopment and an inclusionary set aside.
Because I was just, I believe the population in New Jersey is not increasing, right? In fact, I've heard that people are leaving. I mean, that New Jersey population is going down. So it seems like there should be a way to provide affordable housing besides this heavy emphasis on building new housing.
We will look at all the options and present them to Princeton.
Are there any other questions? So are you going to, when will you have the schedule for us?
I can come to your next meeting.
Okay, excellent, all right.
This will be a transparent process. I mean, we are not operating in a vacuum. You have an incredibly competent staff. We work with the staff, and we will look at all of the housing options, and I will come to as many meetings as you would like so I can keep you totally in the process.
And is the league involved with this, or are different towns getting together to try to figure out if some of this work can be shared in terms of figuring out what's being asked of us?
The problem is that the obligation is a regional obligation, which means the region is Mercer, Monmouth, and Ocean counties. In order to come up with a number, you really have to take the entire region into consideration. But the problem is you have to start from the top. You need a statewide housing need. Then you allocate down to the counties and then to the regions and then to the municipalities. And I don't know what the league is doing at this particular point. But I should also tell you that the court has specifically said that there should be one Mount Laurel judge in every vicinage So that means in Mercer County, there will probably be one judge that will hear all the Mount Laurel cases.
Be busy, I guess. Thank you.
So, Shirley, if I may, so you said that just so I'm clear, that the two numbers for the Princeton Township and Princeton Borough, I guess the new consolidated number from Fair Share Housing was 888.
Correct.
But you also said that that's a 25-year obligation.
Correct.
So within 25 years, you're saying that you can provide 888 houses
From
for affordable
1990, when they calculated...
additional housing for...
Right. When they calculated the need, they calculated on a 25-year term, and that's how they came up with the 888, which is probably a first look at a Princeton number, based
Okay.
on the conversation this morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, just
Yeah,
one
Ms.
more question about
Renata.
the 888 number. By 25 years, what does that mean that right now the number is actually lower, or that we have 25 years to get to the top number? I mean, do you know what I'm asking?
Yes. Because the second round obligation ended in 1999, and because COA had two iterations and the rules were always invalidated, it's now your certification or judgment of compliance is for 10 years. So if you come in with a plan in 2015, the plan is for 10 years, but actually the obligation goes back to 1999, and the numbers are generated on a 25-year obligation. When we present a plan to the court, it will be a plan that will be implementable by 2025.
Okay, so that means that the number is 888, but we have 10 years to
Yes.
comply. Okay.
But to prepare a plan that you can comply with within the 10 years, that's the test.
But we're also not sure that is the number. That's the...
That's fair
Well, that's the Fair Share
Yeah.
Housing Center number, but as I said, it's their number. It doesn't mean that it has the court's agreement.
Now I'm a little bit confused. I thought I understood it. But if we're going back to 25 years from 1999, is this 888 units potentially from this point on, or are we looking back from 1999?
The number was derived from 1999 to 2025, but that number is expected to be implemented in the next 10 years.
Right, but does the affordable housing we developed between 1999 and 2015...
will be credited towards.
Right, so what, does anyone know roughly then what our...
We don't really know because we don't know what your final obligation will be. Once we know that, then we can key in all of the housing activity that has occurred in Princeton since 2008. Because before 2008, all of it went towards the second round. It gets confusing, believe me.
Thank God for you, Shirley.
This will be experts.
Right,
Ms.
one more
Crummer.
question. Isn't it the overall percentage rather than what's been done since 2008?
No, it's
that just doesn't make sense that we wouldn't be credited. I mean, I'm not saying that I want...
It's not that you're not credited. They just gave this blank number of 888. They never looked at what Princeton has done since its second round obligation.
Okay.
So you will be credited. For example, Avalon Bay, Merwick, Stanworth, Copperwood. They will all be credited towards whatever your obligation is. But you have really moved forward, and you should be very proud of yourselves for being proactive.
But what about, Griggs Farm and the other things?
That was all. Griggs Farm was for the second round. What I can do, I can give you the summary of the second round plans and what you propose for the third round to give you an idea, and you can ask me any questions because it gets complicated.
Okay.
In the last round, there were 150-some units, I think, in need of, I think the ruling was we had to rehab 150-some units. Is that correct? In the last...
That round, that number is out. There will be a new rehabilitation obligation. But all of the rehab that Princeton has done since 2010 should be credited towards whatever the third round rehab number is.
Okay. Thank you, and I guess to be continued.
To be continued.
Okay, we'll see you at the next meeting. And I've said a few times already this evening, we do have a very full agenda tonight, and I just wanted to get a show of hands. So who's here, and you can raise your hand more than once if you're here for multiple items, but who's here for the budget introduction?
Two.
Okay.
Three.
And how about for the Lytle Street property? Okay. And is anybody here for any of the ordinance introductions coming after that? No? Okay. I think then we'll start with the Lytle Street property, but given that we really have to introduce the budget tonight, I'm just going to see with council if it's okay if we limit our discussion of Lytle to about an hour and 15 minutes at the max. Okay? All right. Okay. All right, so we're going to skip ahead on the agenda. We're going to take up the second ordinance that's listed here, an ordinance by Princeton appropriating the sum of $600,000 from the Princeton Open Space Trust Fund and authorizing the acquisition of Block 15.02, Lots 71 and 72, Princeton Township Tax Map pursuant to the provisions of the New Jersey Local Land and Building Law, NJSA 40A 12-1. We opened the public hearing for this ordinance at our previous meeting, but just to get everybody up to speed, we've also had a meeting for the neighbors last Thursday. And I wanted to just ask Mr. DeShield to review for council where we are and what the different options are at this point.
First thing I'd like to do is just to go over what is the question in hand for this evening. And that's simply you have an ordinance in front of you that will authorize the use of open space funds for the purchase of 3130 Lytle Street. And again, this is only to commit funds from the open space fund. It does not commit you to actually authorize you to actually purchase the property. So that's the question at hand for the ordinance that's in front of you. But in addition to that ordinance, a number of concerned citizens have raised a number of issues that require some kind of policy decisions from council. And I'm going to kind of walk through those and kind of give you what you need to think about as we move forward. We had a number of residents that came forward indicating they requested that the council preserve the property at 3133 Lytle Street, and indicating that it was eligible for historic on the NJ Historic Register and the National Register of Historic Places, and request that you preserve that property. So the first question that arises is, can you use open space funds for historic preservation? And the answer to that question from all of our discussions is yes, you can use for historic preservations. However, it's a much deeper question that we need to ask ourselves. So if you want to use this property, the policies you must address are as follows. One, is it going to be the policy of the council to actually use open space funds for historic preservation? And if you are to do that, you know, there's a couple of things I think you need to evaluate in order to make that decision, including some very policy decisions, including, you know, what is the expectations from the citizens when this open space tax was first introduced, and what do they expect the use of these funds to be for? And again, you have the ability, it authorizes you to use it for historic preservation. It is the policy decision of the council whether they do or they not use it for historic preservation. For example, the county does not use open space funds for historic preservation as they have indicated to us. Some of the other things you want to look at, is that the best use of the open space funds if you're going to make that decision, and also the accessibility to the public of that property if you're going to use it just for historic preservation. And once you get beyond that kind of threshold question of, you know, do you want to use it for historic purposes, then there's a number of other issues that you need to address in that case. And one of the things that have come up is if we did purchase with open space funds, could that property then be turned over to a third party for historic preservation? there's really two answers to the question. If you just turned it over and you use it for historic preservation to a nonprofit group to manage it, yes, you can. If you were to turn it over using historic preservation funds for any other purposes, you could not. The next issue you want to look at is, once you kind of get beyond that, are also a couple other things that you want to keep in mind. One is the cost of the acquisition of the property. You know, is it financially feasible for the town to acquire the property? You know, what will be for historic preservation? What will be the use of this property? And once you answer that question, it also leads to we need to make the financial decision of, if you find that a use, then what is the ongoing cost of that use of that property for historic preservation purposes? And this, again, make it clear, it's just if you're going to use it for historic purposes. There has been a question, if we could use it, purchase the property of open space funds, and then deed restrict it with a historic easement. In that case, it gets a little tricky. If you were to do that, right now from the legal perspective, it's not clear whether that would actually work, but it does raise some very serious legal issues that on whether we can actually use it and whether that is actually feasible. So you have to keep that in mind.
Wait, can you explain that idea again? I hadn't heard that idea.
That would mean that what you would do is you would purchase it with open space funds, put a historic easement on the property, and then sell it hand it off to someone to do affordable housing. That creates a number of issues. One, whether the property itself could be used for affordable housing and historic preservation, whether that meets the goals of historic preservation. We have not seen any, from the legal perspective, any laws that would prevent that, but we see a lot of issues with that. And we'd have to do more research to determine whether that would actually work. The next issue is, and again, you have to go through a number of issues that you need to address. And I'm just going to walk through, in particular, this property. If we look at it, one of the things that's very important is the fiscal feasibility of the project. And then based on the current situation, one, if we do it for anything but open space, you're going to lose the matching portion from the county. That doubles your cost immediately. If, let's say, it was feasible for you to use the historic preservation funds and turn it to affordable housing, there's an ongoing maintenance cost. An affordable housing unit, you have increased the cost of maintenance by making it a historic easement. That would then become an ongoing cost of the town. In addition, you're also, because of the price, is it financially feasible to actually make it affordable? That will increase our subsidy and make it really difficult to make it financially feasible. Right now, we're looking at least some of the properties that we've looked at, and I think the highest is about $200 per unit. And again, we're looking at, if you look at the ordinance you have, it's about $600,000 for the purchase. That does not include the repairs, which could be up, based on what some of staff has seen, up to about $200,000. So you've got to work your way through all of these kind of issues. Then one of the other alternatives that you have is, could you have a private organization finance property? That's probably the best option, quite frankly, because there will be no municipal involvement and no funds required from the township, from the municipality. And then finally, there has been a question of, could you use Affordable Housing Trust Fund? The issue there we have with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to purchase the property. One, we've looked at a number of properties adding a number of units this year. We've committed almost $1 million in affordable housing that we're working through at this time. We just wouldn't have the funds today to kind of support the additional funds needed to support that. So we need to work through all of these issues in order to kind of make a decision about the units here.
Can I ask a couple of questions before we move further?
Of course.
So the first was, following up, Mr. DeShield, on one of your comments, if we purchase the property with open space funds, you said we could turn it over for management to an external organization, but that's not transfer ownership. Is that correct?
I think what it ultimately goes to is the
the nature of the organization and how the property would be used. So for instance, I think I'm fairly comfortable that if you used open space funds to acquire it, you could probably convey it to a nonprofit that was going to manage it as a museum or a historic property open to the public. I think I can tell you that with near certainty that that would be an acceptable use of the funds. I think I can also tell you with certainty that to use your open space funds to purchase the property for affordable housing would not be an acceptable use. As Mr. DeShield indicated, and I think I had said this last Thursday, the gray area is if you use your open space funds, purchase the property, and then sell it to a third